This is Yuki, a very powerful mage, yet his strength was not the only thing that set him apart, because he entered a violent confrontation that overturned everything in his life, and emerged from it having lost his memory. And while he wandered in confusion, understanding nothing of what surrounded him, he began to feel that something was stirring within him. Perhaps he had forgotten his name, forgotten his past, and forgotten his power. His fighting spirit had not disappeared. With every situation he was placed in, he moved one step closer to a decision buried deep inside him: to defeat anyone who stood in his way, even if he no longer remembered who he was in the first place. After he lost his memory, the ruler Ahid sent him back to the ground, as though granting him a new chance to begin from zero. With him was a guide whose mission was to help him recover his memories one after another, without pressure and without haste. Kokoro, his assistant, was on her way to meet him, her heart filled with questions about him. And after passing beside an ornate window that shone beneath the sunlight, she caught sight of a strange scene. Yuki was lying unconscious on top of a hill, the wind gently moving his clothes, while two dogs stood beside him, bothering him as though he were nothing more than a toy. So she hurried toward them without hesitation, drove them away swiftly and firmly, then approached Yuki and tried to wake him. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a calm face and a reassuring smile. She told him that she would provide him with support and emotional encouragement, and that he was not alone, even if he felt otherwise. Yuki looked around him like a child seeing the world for the first time. He was trying to understand what was and what had brought him to that place. So Kokoro explained to him that he was not only suffering from memory loss, but that many things from his life vanished from his mind, and that this was only natural after what had happened to him. But before they could continue their conversation, the two dogs returned again, this time with louder barking and greater aggression. At that point, Kokoro asked Yuki not only to drive them away, but because his body might remember what his mind had forgotten. The confrontation, however, did not unfold as expected. Yuki was defeated by them, his confusion deepened, and he felt weak and incapable of understanding how he was even supposed to move. At that moment, Kokoro felt guilty, because she was the one who had pushed him into that fight while he was still lost and disoriented. After that, she took him to Lusal City, a city vibrant with life and color, and explained to him that humans there lived peacefully alongside many different races, and that this place might become a new beginning for him. The streets were filled with voices, vendors, and the aromas of food, and all of it caught Yuki's attention. Suddenly, he stopped in front of a sweet shop, and his eyes lit up as though he had found treasure. Kokoro smiled and gave him a gold coin so that he could buy whatever he wanted. But because he had lost his memory and did not understand the value of what he was holding in his hand, he bit the coin as though he were testing it. Kokoro found that strange, then calmly explained to him the value of money and how people used it. After understanding that, he decided to buy sweets for both of them together, as though he were trying to share that moment with her, even if he remembered nothing about himself. After that, they went to the inn in search of a room, but because they did not have enough money, they were forced to think of another solution. Yuki suggested that they camp out in the open, and beneath a sky filled with stars, they sat and tried to rest. But even there, the two dogs returned and attacked him again, as though they were a constant trial set before him. With the sunrise, they headed to the Adventurers Guild, a large building crowded with people dreaming of adventure. Cream welcomed them with a professional smile and led them to the quest board, on which many papers were pinned, each carrying different opportunities. Kokoro found a quest to slay a dragon in Lusal, and she felt excited, but Karen told them that such a quest was far too difficult for them in their current state, and instead suggested a quest to gather mushrooms from strange ruins. At the same time, a girl named Pecorine was bathing beneath a waterfall, the water around her shining beneath the sunlight. Suddenly, she heard two boys crying out for help. She rushed toward them, only to discover that one of them had been pretending to be dead, while the other pointed toward a monster he claimed had attacked them. The moment she approached to help, however, they lunged at her, stole her sword, and left her trying to chase after them. So she ran after them without hesitation, while the two boys hid inside a bush near the ghetto ruins, attempting to escape from her, only to be startled by something strange happening around the area. A little later, Kokoro and Yuki arrived at the ruins, and the place was quiet in an unsettling way. They began searching for mushrooms among the old stones and the crumbling walls. After some time had passed, they found Pecorine nearby, and she looked exhausted, with her hunger clearly written on her face. Without thinking for long, they decided to roast some of the mushrooms they had gathered for her to eat. The fire crackled softly while filled the place. Suddenly, an unknown mage cast a spell that brought a giant rebellious mushroom to life. The ground shook as it approached the fire. Then it began attacking Pecorine violently. At that point, she asked them to stay back so that they would not get hurt. But Yuki and Kokoro decided to help her. Although Pecorine had the situation well under control, their presence hindered her movement somewhat. And when the mushroom was about to stab Kokoro, blurred memories flashed before Yuki's eyes in a single instant, yet those memories were saturated with power. Suddenly he felt energy explode inside him, and he intercepted the attack without hesitation. His body began releasing a strange magical aura, its light bright and powerful, and Pecorine's strength increased noticeably. At that point, she was able to eliminate the entire mushroom army by herself with confidence and force. After the battle ended, while they were gathering the largest mushrooms to complete the quest, Pecorine found a small one and swallowed it whole without thinking. Moments later, she lost consciousness and collapsed. The three of them also came across Cock and Charlie, who were surrounded by mushrooms, but fortunately, a flock of crows suddenly appeared and rescued them from their predicament. While returning to the guild, Yuki carried Pecorine on his back without complaint, and his expression remained calm as he walked. When she recovered slightly, she thanked him for taking care of her, and the gratitude in her voice was unmistakable. On the following day, Kokoro found Yuki training with a sword in the courtyard. His movements were simple, yet filled with determination. His childish behavior appeared endearing in her eyes, as though she were watching a person beginning his life all over again. During breakfast, she expressed her concern about Pecorine's condition, especially since she had seemed deeply affected while leaving them. She also spoke about their need to find more ways to earn money so that they could continue on their path without worry. A strange merchant happened to be sitting nearby. He overheard their conversation and joined in, telling them that the union might provide them with a house if they decided to establish a guild of their own, and that opened before them a new idea of a future they might build together. At the same time, Pecorine awoke in the stables, and after recovering some of her strength, she decided to search for the sword that had been stolen from her, because she could not imagine herself without it. Unbeknownst to her, Charlie and Akino were in the city, and they intended to sell the sword quickly in order to get money. Meanwhile, in the city, Kokoro and Yuki were searching for work, and every corner they passed was crowded with opportunities and voices. When they noticed a crowd gathered around a large square, they approached to see what was happening. There, they found Pecorine taking part in an eating contest, with the audience surrounding her, cheering and laughing. She was devouring food with tremendous appetite and surpassing everyone else with ease, as though food were just another battle she had to win. People were beginning to notice that her presence in the city was far from ordinary, and that the days ahead with her would be filled with adventures greater and stranger than anything that had come before. At that moment, Akino and Charlie appeared, and Pecorine ran after them with the medicine without even thinking of taking the cash prize. Kokoro and Yuki ran after her, and suddenly they encountered a monster resembling a wild boar. Pecorine decided to face it at once, unaware that it was under the control of a mage named Carol, who had granted it additional power. Even so, Pecorine managed to defeat it and send it crashing into the ruins. After that, they found both the boar and Carol lying unconscious amid the rubble, so they waited for them to wake. The moment Carol came to, Kokoro introduced herself and explained that they had found her lying beside the monster while unconscious. As for Pecorine, without knowing that Carol was the mage who had brought the beast there in the first place, she welcomed her kindly. But Carol was annoyed when Pecorine nearly put a hot spoon into her mouth. She leapt to her feet, still unsteady, and when Yuki tried to help her, she shoved him away and said that she had never asked for his help to begin with. Then she began walking away, frustrated with herself, because the person she had been supposed to kill was the very same person who had taken care of her. She could not even understand why she kept calling herself by the name Pecorine, even though that was not her real name, and inwardly, she swore that she would get rid of her at the first opportunity. While hiding behind a tree, she remembered that Pecorine had said that her sword was missing, and that it was something extremely precious to her. At that very moment, she saw Kaki and Charlie nearby, and Pecorine's sword was with them. Suddenly, a dragon appeared and snatched them away, and that gave Carol the perfect chance to reach Pecorine. So she returned to her and offered help in return for the kindness Pecorine had shown her earlier. Pecorine told her that she needed to deliver medicine to a sick man, so Carol asked her what distinguished him. She answered that he carried a large sword, and then suddenly remembered that he had been kidnapped by a huge dragon. At that point, Kokoro remembered the notice pinned to the quest board about a dragon attracted to treasures, and Carol concluded that it had been drawn to the sword. Pecorine feared that something terrible might have happened to Akino and Charlie since they had been carrying her sword, and she decided to go and rescue them. So Carol led them to the dragon's lair, then told them that she would go no farther than that. Although she had intended to deceive them, Pecorine thanked her sincerely, and that made her feel somewhat embarrassed. After Carol left, the group saw the dragon. The sword was in its mouth, while the two thieves were trapped inside its tail. At that moment, Yuki appeared and began waving his cloak in front of the dragon, while Pecorine reassured the thieves that she would save them. The dragon grew furious and clamped its jaws down on Yuki, which distracted it for a moment, allowing Pecorine to seize the chance and leap onto its back, then climb until she reached its head. The moment she reached it, Carol returned and used her magic to control the dragon, then ordered it to kill Pecorine. The dragon slammed its head into a rocky cliff and began flying away, but Pecorine managed to cling to the sword still lodged in its mouth. In the end, her grip slipped, yet at the last possible moment she managed to catch hold of Akino's thick hair before she fell. When Carol noticed that, she made the dragon lose control and begin shaking itself violently, hoping that this would be the end of Pecorine. But Yuki used his cloak to cover the dragon's eyes for a moment, and that gave Pecorine the chance to gather her strength and strike it in midair. She hit it with everything she had directly on the head, causing it to fall and crash into Carol herself. As Carol's magic began to fade, the dragon released the thieves and was about to attack her, but Pecorine appeared with her sword to protect her. The moment the sword returned to her hand, a power resembling sacred force appeared around her, and she was able to destroy the dragon with a single strike. After the battle ended, Kokoro treated Yuki's wounds and asked him not to be so reckless next time. At the same time, Pecorine took Carol's hand and thanked her for helping her, without realizing that she'd been leading her into a trap from the beginning. That night, they bid Akino and Charlie farewell, and after that, Pecorine invited Carol to lunch. Carol said that she was not hungry, but the sound of her stomach exposed her, and so she had no choice but to agree. Before long, Pecorine was extremely happy, because after traveling alone for such a long time, she finally had friends, and that was what made Carol feel guilty about the plan she had intended to carry out. Pecorine suggested that they should establish a guild of their own, so that they could work together and search for the finest food. Kokoro and Yuki agreed at once, but when they presented the idea to Carol, she said that she had no need for their help and began to leave. Even so, she stopped to taste the onigiri that Pecorine had prepared, and was shocked when she discovered that it actually tasted delicious. After that, Carol kept thinking of Pecorine's strength, yet she remained convinced that she would eventually find her weak point and eliminate her. On the following day, and observing her in order to discover that weakness, but all she managed to find was that the girl ate with an unnatural appetite, and yet somehow kept her figure exactly the same. A little later, Carol met Akino and Charlie, and they spoke to her about a new restaurant and invited her there as thanks for saving them. At the same time, Kokoro went to the guild association and told Cream that she wanted to register a new guild. Cream welcomed the idea enthusiastically, but Kokoro explained that she was only taking the application form for now, until she could persuade the others. While Yuki was waiting outside, he saw a beast girl suddenly collapse beside him, so he hurried to help her. She was panting heavily and unable to catch her breath, so he assumed that she was hungry and gave her some food. At that moment, her eyes glimmered with a strange red color. After meeting up with Kokoro, Yuki went to look for Pecorine and found Carol spying on her through the window of a restaurant. He and Kokoro quietly approached her and greeted her, which made her flustered. When they asked what she was doing, she said that she had been hungry and had come to eat something quickly. Kokoro then told her that Pecorine was inside and invited her to have dinner with them. Carol agreed reluctantly, and when they entered, they found Pecorine, Akino, and Charlie eating with enormous appetite. While they were sitting there, Pecorine noticed that Carol seemed irritated, so she tried to feed her with her own hand. But Carol lost her temper. She was unable to understand why Pecorine treated her like a friend, even though she had come there in the first place to kill her. When Pecorine handed her the menu, Carol ordered fish and potatoes, but the restaurant had already run out of the ingredients. Her frustration began to grow and she grabbed Pecorine's cheeks because she was eating so much. At that point, Pecorine revealed the existence of a secret menu of insect dishes. Carol was disgusted when she saw those dishes, and the situation only became worse when she saw that Kokoro had already finished her own portion while praising the taste. In the middle of her irritation, Pecorine placed some of the insect food into Carol's mouth, and the surprise was that she actually liked the taste. At that point, Pecorine apologized for eating more than she should have, and said that she had gotten carried away because she now had friends, promising that she would control herself. But Carol remained cold, and insisted that she had not joined them on purpose, and that this would be the last time they would ever eat together. Even so, Pecorine continued treating her as though she were truly a friend. At that moment, Kokoro pushed the guild registration form toward them and asked whether they wanted to join her and Yuki. Pecorine immediately hugged Kokoro and agreed, whereas Carol said that she had already refused once before. She refused again and left the place, yet outside, she remained irritated by the fact that she had almost eaten with the very girl she was supposed to kill. In order to get the taste of insects out of her mouth, Yuki picked some fruit from a nearby tree. At that moment, a blonde girl carrying juicy fruit approached him and said in a mysterious tone that times of peace were dull and that she wished the rulers would create some exciting spectacles. Then she asked Carol whether she felt the same way, but Carol replied that there was nothing between them in common and then hurried away. That night, while Yuki was asleep, Kokoro wrote her name on the guild form and wished that Carol would join them. On the following day, Pecorine said that she had been offered at a restaurant and had agreed at once because she had run out of money. Kokoro understood that this meant Pecorine would not be able to join the guild, so she hid the application form behind her back. Then they went to the restaurant to watch her while she worked, and there Yuki fed Kokoro with his own hand in order to improve her mood. At that moment, 3 little girls entered, Misogi, Mimi, and Kyoka, and they looked rather displeased. Pecorine welcomed them with a wide smile. While they were drinking milkshakes, Pecorine asked whether they were new there. One of them answered that they belonged to a guild called Luso, but because they were still too young, the guild had not yet been officially registered. Then they asked Pecorine to recommend some dishes for them, so she recommended her favorite dish. At the same time, Carol had received new orders from His Majesty. She no longer needed to kill Pecorine. What was required of her now was only to watch her. He also told her that she had not yet fully adapted to the power of the Princess Knight that he had granted her, and offered her guidance that would help her control it. A little later, Carol found Pecorine feeding insects to the girls of Little Lyrical. She snatched the plate from her hand and asked what she thought she was doing. Pecorine explained that she was not a waitress in that place. Before Carol could understand what was happening, Kokoro arrived carrying the guild registration form and asked Pecorine to join them. Carol said no, but suddenly remembered that, in truth, she had actually intended from the beginning to join the guild so that she could spy on them. Before she could say anything, however, one of the thugs suddenly burst into the restaurant and immediately picked a fight with Ikari. Then he seized an entire table and loudly demanded food, and when the owner of the restaurant approached him, he broke his arm in an instant. Yet instead of picking a fight with him, Pecorine focused on her work as a waitress and calmly took his order. Then she entered the kitchen and began cooking by herself with remarkable skill, and after that, she served him the dish. The man, before even tasting it, believed that he would be able to frustrate her and force the restaurant to shut down in favor of a competing establishment. But just as he was about to try the food, Karen asked him to wait, then squeeze some lemon onto the dish, and the food began to glisten in a strange way. The moment he tasted it, he was completely shaken. He wanted to say that the food was terrible, but after struggling with himself, he admitted that it was the finest thing he had ever eaten in his life. A moment later, however, he returned to his stubbornness, smashed the plate, and claimed that the taste was awful. At that point, Pecorine stopped behaving kindly, to throw him out of the restaurant, and began wondering inwardly whether she had perhaps matured a little through her adventures. After that, Carol took the guild registration form and signed it, which allowed the 4 of them to receive the stamp of approval from Cream. As they walked toward their new guild house, Pecorine said that their goal was to find the finest food in the world and enjoy it together, and that from this day forward, they would be known as the Gourmet Guild. When they arrived at the guild house, Pecorine was extremely excited to begin their new adventure. But first, they had to make the place livable. So they asked Cream why the house looked so old and neglected, and she answered that the clean houses had all run out. Pecorine then asked whether anything strange had ever happened in that house before, and Carol whispered that it might be haunted by ghosts. In spite of Carol's tension, Pecorine said that it was fine. Even ghosts could join them for dinner. Even so, the house was still better than living in the forest, so Kokoro suggested that they clean and organize it. While they were cleaning, Pecorine suddenly became tense and said that there was one serious flaw in the house. Everyone gathered and asked what she meant, and she replied that the house did not contain a dining table. Kirill suggested that they simply buy one from the market, but Pecorine said that their goal was to eat together, and that the table was an essential part of that dream, so they could not just bring in any random table. Because of that, she decided to build the perfect table by herself. Before long, she had begun cutting wood, while Carol watched her in astonishment. Meanwhile, Kokoro approached Carol and asked her to continue cleaning while she herself went to buy some necessities. After Kokoro left, Carol searched every corner and every crack to make sure the house was free of insects, and once she had finished, she began cleaning the bathroom tiles. As for Kokoro, she went into the city to buy a set of tableware, only to discover that she did not have enough money. At that moment, a blonde girl named Shio told her that market prices were always high and that bargaining was possible. Before they could finish their conversation, Shio noticed that one of her men had fallen under the control of a horse, so she stepped in quickly and helped bring the situation under control. After that, the girl introduced herself as Saren, and Kokoro told her that she worked as a maid. Shio then said to Saren that Kokoro had come to buy some things and would need help carrying them back to the house. So Saren offered to carry the items in her carriage. As they walked toward the house, both of them felt that they shared something in common, namely that each one served someone else. Kokoro said that she felt fortunate because her master was very kind. Saren then continued the conversation and said that she had been accompanying Shiori for some time, and that Shiori had once been the vice commander of the Palace Knights, but had left that title behind in order to help orphans. Saren had been deeply moved by her compassion, and because of that, she had decided to remain with her and help her in every way she could. When Kokoro heard those words, her heart felt reassured, and she wished that one day she could build a similar relationship with Yuki. While the two of them were still talking, they suddenly realized that they had lost their way inside the forest, and anxiety began creeping into them. Kokoro calmly said that monsters might be nearby, but Saren lost her composure and urged her donkey forward at full speed. In the end, she tripped and fell flat on her face, forcing Kokoro to run after her, but the donkey bolted away with the carriage and everything inside it, leaving them without money, lost, and on the verge of being attacked. Suddenly, they spotted an animal hiding among the trees, so Kokoro suggested that they catch it and make it pull the carriage. But the moment she threw the rope, the animal began speaking in the language of humans and begged for mercy. After a brief exchange, the llama introduced herself as and said that she worked on a farm behind the forest called Azabit. When they explained what had happened, Remt offered to pull the carriage instead of the donkey. Back at the house, Carol had finished cleaning the bathroom, and when she came out, she found that Pecorine was still working on the dining table. After that, she went inside and asked Yuki to help her clean the windows. While they were talking about how a messy house made even one's thoughts feel disordered, and how cleaning it would be a new beginning for them, Carol suddenly spotted an insect beneath her foot. She panicked and threw the chair aside, causing Yuki to fall and hit his head. And so Yuki awoke once again in the world of the rulers, while his body was still being repaired there. He was told that he had lost consciousness after the fall, and then he spoke about the developments that had taken place in his life recently. He was also told that his friends were tied to the secret of this world, and that each one of them carried private struggles that he would have to overcome, especially Kirill. Then he was warned to be careful, because his enemy was now aware of his existence, and they added that someone would come to help him at the right time. Then Yuki awoke in the real world, and Carol was delighted to see that he was unharmed. After that, they went outside and found that Pecorine had finished making the dining table. She asked them to help her bring it inside, but it was wider than the main doorway, so they had to dismantle it all over again. Meanwhile, Remt was pulling the carriage through the forest with Kokoro and Saren, when a number of armed bandits suddenly appeared and demanded that they hand over the donkey in exchange for being allowed to pass safely. The moment Remt understood that they meant her, she became furious, drew her sword, and launched a powerful attack that sent them all flying away. After that battle, Remt ate a fruit that made her body glow, and then she transformed into a beast girl. She explained that eating a metamorabile allowed her to take on a human form like everyone else. By sunset, Pecorine and the others had finished all the cleaning, and Carol noticed that Kokoro had still not returned from the market. At just the right moment, Kokoro arrived carrying a large bag, and when she stepped inside, she found the place clean and well arranged. Then she looked at the dining table that Pecorine had made, and the entire scene filled her heart with warmth. That night, after the house was finally ready, Pecorine prepared the table with delicious food, and they all sat together, eating and enjoying themselves. After several days, Yuki fell ill because he had not dried his hair after bathing. Kokoro placed wet towels on his forehead, while Pecorine came with a bowl of rice. But as usual, she placed a hot spoon directly into his mouth, causing him sharp pain. When Carol saw what happened, she said that he was spoiled far too much, that he should toughen up and become stronger. Yet the worse Yuki's condition became, the more Carol began to feel unsettled, and she urged Kokoro to do something. At once, Kokoro prepared a fever remedy for him, but Carol panicked when she saw her adding insects to it. Then she went into the kitchen, only to find Pecorine also putting insects into the porridge, and at that point she realized that everyone around her was obsessed with insects. Completely fed up with their foolishness and joking, Carol forced them to take Yuki to a real hospital. There they met a nurse named Nanaka, who was dressed like a witch. When they entered the examination room, Carol noticed that both the nurse and the doctor looked more like fashion models than medical staff. But Pecorine told her not to judge a book by its cover. Even so, Carol cleared her opinion and said that there was something strange about the whole thing. The doctor noticed tiny red marks on Yuki's body and asked Nanaka to prepare him for surgery. To the girls' shock, and before they even understood what was happening, Yuki had already been taken into the operating room, while they remained outside in a state of panic. At the same time, Kokoro cast a spell to strengthen Yuki and increase his chances of survival. Suddenly, they heard screaming coming from the operating room. A little later, they encountered a thin and walking man who seemed utterly terrified. It quickly became clear to them that he was the very same supervisor of Discord, the man who had once been somewhat overweight and had come to the restaurant earlier to complain. So Pecorine asked him why he had become so thin. But instead of answering, he told them that they had to escape from that place immediately, because it was not a hospital at all, but a prison. Then he ran away, and the girls began thinking about how to rescue Yuki. But suddenly they heard his screams again. A little later, they saw a demon girl named Eriko dragging him back into the prison, saying that she had no time to raise him or discipline him because she had to find her soulmate. With obvious anxiety, the girls asked Nanaka whether Yuki was all right, but she told them to leave the place. After that, they returned to the restaurant and tried to comfort Kokoro by taking her out to eat a good meal. At the same time, Eriko left the hospital and went into the city in search of her soulmate. She remembered when she had once been hungry in the street and how Yuki had kindly given her a rice ball, and she began convincing herself that he was the one she had been searching for. Suddenly, she spotted a fortune teller's tent and decided to enter it. There, she learned that she would soon meet her soulmate, which only deepened her interest. Then she roamed through the city in a noble quest to find him, but encountered nothing except drunken men trying to test her forbidden demonic strength. She beat them all, stole their treasure, and declared that none of them was the person she sought. After hours of searching, she returned to the hospital in a state of depression and decided for no clear reason to head toward Yuki's room. When Yuki woke up, he found Eriko's face pressed close to his, and he began panting when he saw her glowing red eyes. On the following day, the girls of the Gourmet Guild woke up in their home, and after breakfast, they decided to go and check on Yuki. Pecorine believed that he was surely missing her delicious food, not realizing that he was in fact suffering psychological trauma because of Eriko's obsession with him. Before long, the girls arrived at the hospital and found a large crowd gathered outside. They asked the doctor why those people were there, and the women explained that one of the nurses had beaten them the previous day and stolen their treasure. At that moment, Eriko hurled her axe from the window so that it landed at the girls' feet and ordered them to remain silent because her soulmate was trying to rest. When they refused to leave, Eriko launched an elegant attack against them, and at that moment they recognized her as the infamous Destroyer. Nanaka also attacked, revealing her identity as the Collector. In the end, even the doctor joined them and introduced herself as the one-eyed demon, Mitsuki. Those three were known as the Twilight Caravan, one of the most dangerous and strangest guilds in existence, because they abducted thieves and used them as human laboratory rats. At that point, the girls of the Gourmet Guild decided to sneak in and rescue Yuki from those strange creatures. They managed to reach his room without being seen, but suddenly stopped when they saw Eriku taking care of him. While watching from outside, Eriku took out a cursed engagement ring and decided to place it on Yuki so that she could enjoy her private amusement park journey with him. At that moment, the girls decided that they had to stop her before it was too late, and they asked Kokoro to cast a strange spell that spread purple smoke throughout the area. The smoke distracted Eriku, so she stepped out of the room to investigate, which allowed Pecorine and Carol to rush inside. But while they were trying to pull Yuki away with them, they suddenly found themselves in a strange place, while Eriku and Mitsuki were approaching them from every direction. At the last moment, Carol acted as a diversion, while Pecorine shoved Yuki out of the window, where Kokoro was waiting for him below. When Pecorine turned back to save Carol, she found that Mitsuki had already seized her, and Carol signaled for her to keep running without her, and so Carol remained behind, while the girls took Yuki to a real doctor, who told them that he would be fine after a few days of rest. He also informed them that Mitsuki was not as evil as they had first believed. Everyone felt somewhat relieved after the visit to the clinic, and hoping that his words were true, they decided to return later to bring Carol back once things had calmed down. On the following day, Carol returned home alone and headed straight to bed. When she woke up the day after that, Pecorine had already prepared breakfast for everyone, but Carol could not even remember that she had returned from the hospital in the first place. While they were eating, Pecorine said that they had to celebrate Carol's return and that she had already registered them for a food-related quest. The quest involved gathering spices in exchange for daily pay and a full set of seasonings. Carol immediately announced that she could not do physical labor and that she would remain out of the mission, but Pecorine began to cry because she had been so excited for the first quest they would undertake together. When Carol saw everyone's reaction, she finally yielded to the pressure and agreed to join them reluctantly. Before long, everyone prepared themselves and set out, with Pecorine being the most excited of all. After passing through nearly 12 different environments, they decided to make camp, and Carol was forced to go fishing. Although she could not catch anything, she kept trying because she knew that if she failed, they would make her eat insects. That night, she finally gave up, so Kokoro said that they could make soup from vegetables and frogs. At that moment, Yuki arrived carrying dozens of frogs, and Carol panicked and screamed that from that day forward, she would become a vegetarian. Fortunately, Pecorine returned carrying perfectly cooked bird meat and gave them a dinner they truly deserved. While they were eating, they noticed that Kokoro was holding a strange fruit, and Pecorine said that it had been among the birds she had brought a little while earlier. Since it looked ripe and sweet, everyone began eating it in large amounts, unaware that it would make them intoxicated. Carol was the first to fall under its influence, and shortly afterward, everyone except Kokoro began acting strangely. When everyone fell asleep, Kokoro remained awake, keeping watch over them, and she was very happy that she had found such wonderful people. On the following day, Carol woke up feeling dizzy, so Kokoro handed her a damp towel to wash her face. Suddenly they noticed that a monster was carrying Yuki away, and everything instantly descended into panic. As the monster fled through the forest, it was struck by an arrow and fell, causing Yuki to crash into a tree. When he regained consciousness, he found a small tree stump talking to him, which was incredibly strange from his point of view. And when Yuki grabbed the stump and started shaking it violently, an elf archer emerged from the trees and asked him to be gentle with her companion. She then introduced herself as Aoi and explained that she had made that stump her friend because she did not have any real friends. Aoi possessed the ability to speak with plants and animals, but she still did not know how to deal with people. And while she was talking about her loneliness, Yuki began thinking about the meaning of the word friends, which led her to conclude that he too was looking for a friend. Filled with enthusiasm, she suggested that they should search for a friend together, and then she formed a team with them and named it Farewell to Loneliness Team. Meanwhile, Yuki stood there in confusion, wondering inwardly whether she had been born with a strange nature or had simply drunk too much the night before. Suddenly, Pecorine and the others arrived looking for him, and Yuki told them that Aoi was the one who had saved his life. As they walked together, they noticed that Aoi was keeping her distance behind them because she did not want to intrude on them in the role of a friend. But Carol reminded her that she was the one who was supposed to guide them out of that place, and therefore she ought to be walking in front of them. While they were talking, Kokoro spotted the village, and there they were welcomed by a woman named Misato, who asked them for the name of their guild. Kokoro hesitated to say it, but Pecorine immediately stepped in and introduced them as the Gourmet Guild. Misato then revealed that there was another guild there as well, called Azabit, which was the very same guild to which Rima belonged. At the same time, Rima and her companions were on their way to the village, and they decided to take a short rest because one of them, Shiori, was not feeling well. Suddenly, they were confronted by dark, hazy copies of themselves, and those copies immediately began attacking them. The group tried to defend themselves, but in the middle of the fight they were struck by a powerful attack and fell to the ground. And when the dust settled, a strong blonde woman appeared and introduced herself as Christina, then demanded that they stand up and give her a real fight. We returned to the village, where the Gourmet Guild saw a pink-haired girl flying through the air, only to crash into the bell tower. Even then, she did not wake from her slumber until Kokoro roused her. She sprang up quickly and introduced herself as Hatsune, saying that she was an ordinary girl who simply loved sleeping very much. She then explained that she had also come for the harvest mission and that she was extremely excited to see her sister Shiori, who was in Elizabeth Park. She added that Shiori had been ill for some time and loved reading books, and so she had brought her a new book as a gift. Without even noticing, she had become separated from her guild. Then suddenly, her condition worsened, and a shadow copy of her appeared and carried her away. At that moment, Shiori remembered the days when she and Hatsune used to read together from the very book that had been brought for her. Hatsune had noticed that Shiori's health had improved ever since they arrived at that farm, and she had promised her that she would never leave her, even if she fell ill again. In that moment, Shiori's fever rose, so Hatsune carefully covered her in bed, which made Shiori feel as though she were a burden to her. But in the present, Shiori found herself floating in space, on the verge of being swallowed by a black aura. Meanwhile, Pecorine and her team were excited for the harvest, and they took advantage of the time to grow closer to one another. Suddenly, Misato and Aoi arrived together with Hatsune, who explained that her powers were exhausting her, and that for that reason she would not be taking part in the harvest that day. While they were speaking, they heard someone crying out for help, and when they followed the sound, they found people gathered around the members of Elizabeth Park Guild, all of whom had been badly injured. Then Maho explained that they had been ambushed on the road by their own shadow copies, and that afterward they had been attacked by a powerful sword. Hatsune immediately asked about Shiori, only to learn that they had lost track of her during the assault. They said that after the battle they had been unable to move, and that all of it had only been possible thanks to Rima, who had barely managed to bring them back there. While Kokoro was treating Rima's wounds, Hatsune overheard some of the villagers talking about monsters in the forest, and her anxiety for her sister only deepened. Then suddenly, she touched Rima's forehead to see her memories, and decided that she had to find Shiori before it was too late. At the same time, Christina was sitting alone in the forest, while hundreds of shadows stood among the trees watching her. After speaking to herself about a great plan, she gathered those shadows with her and began the second phase of her mission. We returned to the village, where Hatsune wanted to go and search for Shiori, but Misato told her not to go alone. At that point, Rima stepped in and said that she would accompany her, so that the two sisters could finally meet again. When Yuki saw that, he decided to go as well, and encouraged Aoi and Kokoro to join the search party. And when Pecorine asked Carol whether she would go with them, she noticed that Carol had already disappeared and left the place. A little later, in the forest, Aoi sensed a strange presence, so Hatsune flew upward to see what was happening from above. Suddenly she was struck by a tremendously powerful attack, and although she managed to block it, she began falling without control. When she landed on the ground, she saw a single arrow lying there, and when she turned behind her, she found Shiori advancing toward her with a terrifying expression. At first, Hatsune felt relieved when she saw her, but she noticed that the color of Shiori's hair was changing, and that left her confused. Before she could understand what was happening, Shiori drew a black bow and began attacking her, and a massive explosion tore through the forest. When Kokoro and the others reached her, they found her sitting there alone, weeping, unable to understand how her own sister could possibly try to hurt her. At that point, Yuki encouraged her to stand up once more, and she decided to face her sister again. At the same time, Carol was acting as a spy for the enemy. She knew everything that was happening in the forest, and she was torn between her loyalty to her queen and her companionship with Pecorine. Her mission was supposed to be limited to observing Pecorine alone, but with the shadows now involved, she realized that the entire village would be destroyed. Suddenly, Pecorine found her and ran toward her, saying that she had noticed the sadness on her face and had come to cheer her up. Carol grew embarrassed and began shouting at her, but Pecorine was simply happy that Carol had returned to her usual self. After that, Pecorine asked her to join them in searching for Shiori, but they were interrupted when they heard the screams of the villagers. It turned out that the shadows had entered the village and were on the verge of consuming it. Fortunately, Pecorine was there to confront them, but the most dangerous enemy was Shiori, who had fallen under control, both with her mind and with her black bow. While Pecorine was surrounded by the shadows, the others decided to return and help her, but the sudden appearance of Christina stopped them. Rima immediately warned them to be careful, because she was the same woman who had attacked her team before. Without the slightest hesitation, Christina rushed forward at terrifying speed and was just about to pierce Hatsune, but Yuki stepped between them and blocked the attack. Even so, Christina used a technique that allowed her sword to pass through him. Fortunately, Kokoro was fast enough to reinforce his defense, and that was what allowed Yuki to survive a direct strike. But Yuki lost consciousness and awoke in the world of the rulers. There, the girl explained to him that Kokoro and the others were not strong enough to face this enemy, and that they would be killed. So Yuki asked her to send him back immediately, but she ignored his request and told him that she had fought Christina many times before. She added that she was not yet ready to intervene in the material world, and that therefore the responsibility of saving his friends rested upon him alone. Then she told him that the only way to survive was to activate the Prince of Night ability, the power he had used before he lost his memory. She asked him to remember the old days, when he used to go on adventures with her, before sending him back to the real world. At the same time, Christina was preparing to finish off the rest of them, but Yuki suddenly awakened and activated a power that strengthened all of his allies. Once they became stronger than ever before, Rima used the apple to transform into her human form and began attacking Christina. Aoi supported her from a distance with her precise archery, while Hatsune hurled an entire star bomb at her. And when the smoke began to clear, Yuki charged forward and crossed swords with Christina, who was stunned that a single enhancement from him had transformed his group from ordinary people into heroes. Even with all that, Christina was still far stronger than they were, yet she acknowledged Yuki's strength and decided to spare them out of respect for him. Before leaving, she told Hatsune that her sister would soon be swallowed by the shadows, and that drove Hatsune to rush off immediately in search of her. In the village, Pecorine was struggling against a swarm of shadows, while Carol watched from afar. Carol remembered that her mission was supposed to be nothing more than observation, yet she was torn between obeying orders and repaying Pecorine's kindness. When the shadows began to overwhelm Pecorine, Carol suddenly entered the battle in a massive explosion, joking that Pecorine needed to stop being lazy on the battlefield. After that, she revealed her true power and unleashed an explosion that covered the entire place with dust and smoke. Meanwhile, Hatsune reached Shiori and touched her forehead, saw her memories, and then pulled her back from the very moment in which the shadows were about to swallow her. She begged her to come back, but Shiori said that she wanted to remain there because she saw herself as a burden on her. So Hatsune gently pulled her cheeks and told her that she was not a burden, but rather her adorable little sister who always encouraged her. She reminded her that she had promised never to leave her, but that moment was interrupted when a gigantic psychological monster appeared, seeking to devour them both. Hatsune realized that she did not have enough energy to fight such a monster, and so Shiori decided to act herself. She summoned her bow, and with her sister's support, fired an enchanted arrow that passed through the monster and pulled it out of her body. The moment it emerged, Carol and Pecorine combined their powers and destroyed it, and by doing so, Carol made it clear that her loyalty now belonged to Pecorine and her friends. Meanwhile, Rima and the others reassured themselves that Shiori was safe, though she quietly asked them to lower their voices because Hatsune was resting. As time passed, Kokoro and the Gourmet Guild began carrying out many different quests and going through all kinds of adventures until they became a powerful guild praised by the Guild Association. In one farming mission, they took a break to enjoy rice balls while looking out over the rice fields planted by the farmers. They spoke about the wild boars and birds that had been ruining the crops, and Pecorine said that their job was to make sure that such a thing never happened again. In return, they would receive a large amount of fresh rice, but Carol was irritated because all of their rewards seemed to revolve around food, and she wanted real money for a change. As for Kokoro, she said that they needed to focus on helping the farmers, and so she made a scarecrow together with Yuki, Carol continued to think that they ought to choose quests with better rewards, but in the end she fell silent when Pecorine placed a delicious rice ball into her mouth. After that, Carol remembered herself giving a report to Her Majesty in the palace, where she had been surrounded by the very same shadows she had destroyed before. Her Majesty overlooked the matter because she had not been informed in advance about that attack, and then ordered Carol to keep a close watch on Yuki. After they had set up the scarecrows, the members of the group headed to the Adventurers Guild in search of a new quest. The moment Pecorine saw a quest whose reward was fish, she showed clear interest in it, but Carol rejected it immediately. At that moment, Yuki noticed a notice from someone looking for people who could guide them on how to function effectively as a guild, and in return, they promised many unspecified rewards. Kokoro approached them and warned them not to accept that quest, because it was not officially approved. Then she explained that no matter how many times they removed that notice, a new one would appear the following day. The members of the group decided to ignore what she had said, but Yuki kept the notice with him as he left the guild hall. Meanwhile, they saw the girls of Luso Guild pretending to be in trouble. Carol immediately noticed that they were acting and suggested that they ignore them, but the girls blocked their path and continued the performance, as though they were begging anyone at all to pay attention to them. At that point, Misogi saw the notice in Yuki's hand and asked him whether he was interested in helping them. After that, while they were sitting in a restaurant, the girls of Little Lyrical admitted that they were looking for a mentor to guide them because they had absolutely no idea how to function as a guild. Carol did not like that at all and asked them why they were behaving like three odd little creatures at an official meeting. To which Kyoka replied that they wanted to protect the peace of Landasol. Those words made the members of the Gourmet Guild reflect on their own principles as well, because up to that point they had cared only about food and money. They felt somewhat guilty, and so they agreed to help Little Lyrical. That night, they began planning how to make the girls experience accepting quests by themselves. Carol doubted the map that had been drawn for them, but Kokoro told her not to underestimate herself because she was very kind and a skilled teacher. At that time, Pecorine was busy preparing something, and when they asked what she was doing, she said that they would find out the next day. As for Yuki, he was preparing the treasure the girls would find at the end of their journey so that they would feel a sense of accomplishment. On the following day, Pecorine gathered the girls of Little Lyrical and began acting like one of those strict game instructors nobody likes. She showed them a map of the area, and on it there was an X marking the location of the treasure. After making sure that they had the basics necessary for the journey, she sent them off with Yuki to carry out the quest. Carol wondered inwardly whether they would actually be alright, because Yuki seemed closer to a burden than to a guide. But Pecorine was confident that the map had been simplified to such a degree that even he would be able to understand it. When the group reached a fork in the road, the girls of Little Lyrical asked which direction they should take and sought Yuki's help, but in the end, he pointed them toward the wrong path. Even so, Pecorine and the others decided not to interfere. As they made their way through the forest, they were ambushed by small spiders that frightened them terribly. In the midst of the confusion, Kokoro secretly spoke to Yuki and told him that he had directed the girls onto the wrong path, and when Little Lyrical turned back, Yuki led them down another wrong road, so Pecorine decided to use her secret card in order to return them to the correct route. A little later, the team of Little Lyrical encountered Pecorine disguised as a mascot monster, and she warned them against continuing along that path because it was full of ghosts. But the girls, after becoming more confident in themselves because of their previous battle, ended up defeating Pecorine herself. As they continued onward, Carol noticed that they had strayed even farther from the original path, and at that moment they faced a real monster that bit Yuki. The girls bravely stood up to defend him, but before they could confront that creature, Carol had already secretly killed it and saved them along with him. After that, she and Kokoro went ahead and eliminated all the monsters in the surrounding area so that the girls would face no further danger. That allowed them to take a break when they stopped for a small picnic. During that time, they met Pecorine, who told them that Yuki had led the girls directly into a harpy nest, a very dangerous place. And while they were discussing the matter, they saw a giant bird snatch Yuki away and fly with him to its nest. So the girls of Little Lyrical rushed after the bird to rescue Yuki, only to find themselves in real danger when the bird began attacking them. When the girls of the Gourmet Guild reached the nest, they found Yuki and his scarecrow inside and discovered that it was the same bird that had been attacking the rice fields. Carol tried to control it with magic, but she quickly grew exhausted because she had already used most of her energy clearing the forest for Yuki and the girls. As for Kokoro, she was a healer and had no offensive magic, and Pecorine was unable to fight while she was hungry. But the moment she saw the food that the leader of Little Lyrical had prepared for the adventure, Pecorine took a single bite and regained her strength. With only one strike, she defeated the bird, and when the girls woke up, they believed that they were the ones who had defeated it. While they were celebrating, Kokoro told them that by doing so, they had completed their quest, but she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to bring the treasure from the destination point. So Pecorine rushed to save the situation and said that the treasure was the giant egg and that she would turn it into a delicious dish. But the surprise was that the egg suddenly cracked open and a small bird came out of it and began acting affectionately beside the leader of Little Lyrical. At that point, Kyoka revealed that she had known all along that they were pretending, and thanked them for going that far just to help them. She also promised that she would not tell Mimi and Misogi anything, and she even thanked Yuki for pretending to be kidnapped, even though in truth he had actually been kidnapped. On the following day, the Gourmet Guild returned to planting rice. Carol was irritated because they still had not received any real reward from their quests. At the same time, the leader of Little Lyrical now had a pet bird, which they used to keep the fields free of pests. After several days, Kokoro brought some lottery tickets and decided to redeem them. Carol had finished her work in the rice fields and returned to eat dinner, only to be stunned when she learned that Kokoro had won the first prize, which was a huge amount of sea-related goods. That same night, Yuki was in his room when Kokoro entered and asked his opinion. Then she explained that she had grown up in the forest and had never worn a swimsuit before, so she was nervous. She added that the people in the shop had praised how she looked, but she was not confident, and she wanted to know whether he liked it as well. When Yuki raised his thumb in approval, she gave him an instructional book on how to swim, and the two of them began practicing the movements together. On the following day, the group arrived at the beach. Pecorine was happy as always, while Carol felt embarrassed about showing her charms in front of people. And after Pecorine dragged her along with her unwillingly, she stepped into the water and splashed Yuki, causing his eyes to burn from the salt of the sea. After they had played for a while, they returned to the shore, and Pecorine noticed that she felt somewhat tired, which seemed strange to Kokoro because she was always full of energy. At that point, Pecorine revealed that her usual armor granted her increased endurance, but at the cost of making her feel even hungrier. Since she was wearing a swimsuit this time, she was becoming tired quickly. So Carol told her not to reveal such secrets to them, but Pecorine replied innocently that it was all right because they were all friends. At that moment, they saw Suzume being dragged through the mud behind her donkey, so they hurried to save her. She thanked Kokoro for the help, introduced herself to the others, and said that she had met Kokoro before at the market. Then Suzume explained to them that they had opened a new snack stand near the sea and invited them to visit it. There they met Shizuru, and they ordered a large amount of food. While they were eating, Carol noticed that there were no customers besides them, even though it was supposed to be a busy hour. It did not take long for them to discover that another food stand on the beach had taken all the customers away. So the team decided to find out what had attracted people to that place, and they discovered that it was a special taiyaki stand belonging to the Mercurius Foundation. A little later, the head of the foundation, Akino, appeared and arrogantly declared that they were amateurs who understood nothing about food. She also asked Shizuru to become one of her subordinates so that she could earn money quickly, but Shizuru refused her offer. Then one of Mifuyu's companions in the guild revealed that the truth was that Akino wanted to cooperate with Pecorine, but her pride prevented her from admitting it. Even so, Akino continued playing the role of the haughty lady and asked Pecorine to join her team before the end of the summer. That statement annoyed Carol greatly. When they returned to the snack stand, Carol said that she would not allow Akino to do whatever she wanted that easily. But Shizuru gently advised her not to ruin their vacation because of Akino's business affairs. Then the girls explained that the mission of their guild was to enjoy delicious food together, and therefore coming up with a new menu for the stand was something that would truly make them happy. A little later, they went to the beach in search of ingredients, and after several hours they managed to gather some fresh produce. Suddenly, they heard the emergency bell, so they ran toward the shore, and there they saw a kraken in the sea that had snatched pushed Yukari away. At once, Pecorine and Carol worked together to drag it out of the water, and then Shizuru ended the battle with a finishing blow. After they had resolved the situation, they began wondering what they should do with the kraken, and Kokoro suggested that they use it as an ingredient in food. On the following day, the stand was crowded with enthusiastic customers eager to try the grilled kraken meat, while Shizuru and Akino relaxed on the beach, each expressing respect for the other despite their rivalry. At the same time, Carol gathered the members of her guild and sprinkled them with a water-breathing potion, which granted them the ability to swim without needing to wear special clothing and also allowed them to explore the coral reefs. While they were underwater, Kokoro remembered everything she had experienced since joining the guild, and she credited all of it to her master Yuki, because without him, none of it would have happened. After several days, the team returned to the guild house and sat together eating breakfast while talking about their trip. Carol said that the best part of it had been the squid meat, but that they would not be able to catch another one anytime soon. They also talked about how they were now truly trying many different kinds of food, which meant that they were actually fulfilling the goal of their guild. A little later, Pecorine went to the market, while Kokoro and Yuki went to the restaurant to deliver squid sandwiches to the owner, while Carol stayed home to look after the house. When they arrived, they found Shiro and Kurumi trying to lift the owner's spirits, as he was depressed and upset. The moment they saw Yuki, they told him that the owner had been making pudding without stopping and had not slept at all for several days. At that exact moment, Yuki caught sight of someone moving among the shadows. Then a girl decided to step out of her hiding place and said that her name was Shinobu the Holy One. She then explained that she had heard a rumor about a man making pudding as though he were possessed, so she had come to see whether it was true or not. But instead of that, she had found someone entirely different there. Afterward, she asked her guildmate, Miyako, to appear, and revealed that she was the one responsible for this possession. Then Miyako admitted that she loved eating pudding, but the owner had begun putting insects into it, so she had been forced to possess him to stop him from doing that, and then punished him by making him obsessed with pudding. Shinobu asked Miyako not to use her powers so casually, then explained to Kokoro that Miyako was actually a ghost. Shinobu was amazed that Yuki had been able to see a ghost, since no one else could do so, and so she asked him to come with them to the house of the Demon Guild. A little later, they arrived at a vast and frightening mansion, but were attacked by Akari and Yori, who mistook them for intruders. Shinobu told them to calm down, then explained that Yuki might be the key to fulfilling her dream of reviving the vampire queen. The moment Kokoro heard that, she told Yuki that the two of them needed to leave, but a wall of bats blocked their way out. A voice called to them, and they were transported into a room where they found a gothic vampire mummy sealed inside a crystal. She introduced herself as Ilya, Guardian Knight, and explained that the crystal was only a tiny fragment of her true power. She said that she had seen Yuki's abilities through her watchful eyes, and that he might be the person she needed in order to fully restore her strength. After that, she emerged from the crystal and commanded everyone to kneel before her in a terrifying voice. But her body aged through long years, and she turned into a tiny child crawling on all fours, while still trying to behave like a ruler. Then Shinobu explained that Ilya was the queen of all demons, and that she had once led them in battle against all the other races in ancient times. But after a difficult war, she had ultimately lost against the rulers and been sealed away. The Demon Guild had broken that seal, but because Ilya now possessed no magic, her appearance had become small. Kokoro grew worried that she might harm Yuki, but Ilya reassured them that they were safe, and that she only needed Yuki's help in order to recover her strength. Then she gently placed her hand on Yuki's chest and remarked that he was even less useful than Sakura, which irritated everyone. Suddenly, Ilya ran out of magic, and her bat servants began attacking her, forcing Yuki to scoop her into his arms and run with her as fast as he could. As he ran, both of their bodies began to glow, and when he finally stopped, he found that Ilya had returned to her original form as a gothic mummy and had regained her power. After that, she destroyed the servants who had defied her, and every demon nearby felt her strength. While the guild was celebrating her return, Ilya swore that she would conquer the world, but her ambitions were interrupted when her magic ran out again. At that point, Kokoro decided to slip away in the midst of the chaos once more, but Miyako scolded Yuki, saying that because of him, he had ruined all of her plan, and that now she would curse him for the rest of his life. At the same time, Carol was sitting at home feeling bored and waiting for the others to return. Suddenly, she heard Yuki at the door, so she opened it eagerly, only to be shocked when she found that he had arrived with an entire group of strangers. After inviting them inside, Carol learned that Yuki had ruined Miyako's pudding, and so she wanted him to make a new pudding for her, otherwise she would curse him for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Pecorine was still shopping when she overheard two men talking about the destruction of a theater. Suddenly, she saw Shiro and Kurumi together with the owner, and they told her that he had previously been possessed by a ghost. But since he had managed to free him from that ghost, they were now celebrating his recovery. At that moment, Kurumi's mother appeared and smacked him on the head, telling him that he needed to stop exploiting others like his father and start helping in the shop. She also thanked Pecorine for helping her son and wished that he had become even half as useful as she was. Pecorine felt appreciated and said that she had learned everything from her parents, but something about her words made that woman feel that Pecorine's parents had not been entirely happy with the way things had turned out. Suddenly, many customers began flooding into the shop just to see Pecorine, so she decided to stay a little longer and help with the work. Back at the house, Carol was on the verge of losing her mind while trying to make pudding, wishing that Pecorine would come back quickly and take over the task. Since none of the others knew how to cook at all, Kokoro asked Miyako to wait until Pecorine returned, but Miyako said that she wanted pudding right now, at that very moment. That same night, after Kurumi's family had closed the shop, her mother thanked Pecorine for helping them and gave her a large amount of vegetables as a token of gratitude. When Pecorine returned home, she found that Miyako had turned all those vegetables into pudding and was just about to eat it. Pecorine immediately understood the situation and promised Miyako that she would make her the finest pudding she had ever tasted in her life, if only she would return her friends to normal. That offer was tempting enough that Miyako decided to give her a chance. And just as expected, Pecorine kept her promise. In the end, Miyako declared that it was the greatest pudding she had ever tasted, and she restored everyone to their normal state. But the matter took a dark turn when Pecorine revealed that she had put insects into the pudding to enhance the flavor. Miyako was so shocked that she fainted on the spot, and Shinobu had to carry her home. Several days later, the group was waiting for Carol at breakfast, but it seemed that she was still deeply asleep. Eventually, Pecorine lost patience and began pounding violently on her door, while Carol remained asleep on the bed. For a moment, Pecorine thought that Carol had died, so she panicked, smashed the window, and rushed inside, only to discover that Carol was perfectly fine. At the table, Carol warned her to respect her personal space, but Pecorine drifted off in thought and assumed that the word personal was some kind of side dish on a menu. After Kokoro explained the meaning to her, Pecorine promised that she would be more careful, but Carol remained irritated because she had broken her favorite stuffed toy. Kokoro tried to save the situation once more and said that she would repair it because she knew how to sew. After breakfast, the three girls went to the market to buy sewing supplies, while Carol stayed at home to watch the house. When they failed to find a fabric shop, Yuki suggested that they split up, but Kokoro knew that he would get lost even if maps were built directly into his brain. Even so, Yuki reassured he would be fine and began searching for a nearby fabric shop. Before long, he found one, but he saw a shadow about to swallow the shop owner, so he rushed inside to defend him. The shadow, however, was stronger than he was, and Yuki saw his life flash before his eyes. At that exact moment, a girl named Shizune appeared in dramatic fashion and split the shadow in two. After finishing it off, she ran to Yuki, called him little brother, and began bombarding him with questions. Then she remembered that he had lost his memories and told him not to worry because she would protect him. At that very moment, a red-haired girl stormed in, shouting at Shizune for putting herself in danger because the two of them had been supposed to observe from afar. Then she dragged Shizune away and told Yuki had to pretend that he had not seen anything at all. In a dark alley, the girl kept complaining and told Shizune that she also wanted to speak with Yuki, but that they had to obey orders. Suddenly, she got her purpose and decided that she wanted to go see Yuki herself until Shizune smacked her on the head to restore her senses. On the other side, Kokoro saw a pink butterfly and decided to follow it, but she lost sight of it in a dark alley. At the same time, after Carol had finished tidying the house, she went out for a walk, wondering whether Kokoro would really be able to fix her stuffed toy. Suddenly, she saw a beautiful white rose and decided to offer it to Her Majesty in order to make her happy. Elsewhere, many shadows began appearing throughout the city, and Shizune relayed that information to her guild teacher, Barista. After that, Yuki met up with the others once more, and although they still had not found a fabric shop, they decided to continue searching. At the same time, Carol arrived at Her Majesty's palace, where the queen was busy creating shadows, and she produced a stronger shadow wearing a metal mask over its face. Then she ordered that masked shadow to go and bring her prey, and when it passed by Carol, the rose she had been carrying withered. The queen then told her to throw that filth away immediately, and Carol obeyed, though she felt sad. Meanwhile, Yuki and Kokoro had taken a short break to eat a light snack, but when Yuki's clothes were stained with ketchup, Kokoro went to fetch him a damp towel. There, she encountered the red-haired girl, who demanded that she explain why she was so close to Yuki. Kokoro calmly explained that she served Yuki by order of the ruler Ahid. At that moment, Shizune appeared and smacked the girl on the head until she regained her senses, then apologized to Kokoro for the commotion. She explained that her brother Yuki was very dear to both of them, and that was why they were so protective of him. But when they looked behind them, they discovered that Yuki was no longer sitting on the bench, and immediately began to wonder whether the shadows had kidnapped him. So Shizune suggested that they split up to search for him, and Kokoro went with Pecorine to explain what had happened. At that exact moment, they overheard two men talking about Yuki's kidnapping, so they asked them for more information. The two men led them to a dark and frightening mansion, but when they entered, they discovered that those men had actually been talking about Shiro. At that moment, the gang leader appeared in a terrifying form and declared that he would erase anyone who stood in his way. But it turned out that this man was the very same slightly plump man who had gone to Pecorine's workplace a few weeks earlier, and because of that, he let Shiro go. After that, the four girls gathered together, and Pecorine suggested that they post a notice in the Adventurers Guild to search for Yuki. When they went there, they told Karen that Yuki had disappeared, but they discovered that he had actually been there earlier because of a certain quest. At that exact moment, Yuki returned holding a rainbow silkworm in his hand and explained that he had been on a quest to find fabric. It turned out that while he had been waiting on the bench, he had caught sight of Eriku in the crowd, so he immediately hid from her after she had been chasing him in the hospital. After that, he saw a quest notice about the rainbow silkworm and decided to accept it. He had almost become food for moths while carrying out that quest, yet he still managed to complete it alone because he wanted to repair Carol's stuffed toy. Shizune and the red-haired girl had been watching him from afar, and they noticed that even without his memories, Yuki was still as kind and considerate toward others as he had always been. That night, while Carol was on her way home, she was worried that the new shadow might be stronger than it should be, and she kept wondering whether she ought to continue pretending to play the role of a double agent or simply give up. And when she found the house empty, her irritation only deepened. But the moment she saw her friends returning with her stuffed toy already repaired, a quiet smile appeared on her face. One day, Pecorine dreamed that her parents did not recognize her, and she was in tears. After getting up, she prepared breakfast for everyone with her usual enthusiasm, but Carol began complaining because she had forgotten to place the egg inside the bread. In truth, Pecorine revealed that she had not been able to find all the ingredients in the market because a dragon had made its nest on the bridge leading into the city. The villagers had asked the royal palace for help, but for some reason, no response had come. Pecorine told the others that she had gone to the Adventurers Guild and accepted the quest herself, although Carol noticed that the rank of the quest was far higher than what they were used to. After that, Carol used the shoulders of Pecorine's armor to defend herself more effectively and drove the dragon away from the bridge while hurling insults at it. At the same time, Yuki and the others had set up a rope trap in the forest, and when Carol jumped over it, the dragon stumbled. After that, Pecorine used her weapon and defeated the dragon, then joined everyone in a great embrace to thank them for helping her. Without them noticing, the masked shadow had been close to them the entire time, and it was stealing the soul of an innocent merchant. Then they returned to the guild, where Karen confirmed that the quest had been completed and asked them to write the report. Among them, Yuki volunteered to write it. After they left the Adventurers Guild, they learned that news of the dragon's death had spread throughout the entire city, and that people had gathered around Pecorine to thank her for saving their livelihood. Afterward, Pecorine suggested that they go have sweets, and she took them to the place where Kokoro and Yuki had gone on their first day. There, it turned out that the Labyrinth Guild owned the place, and they were all shocked when they saw Yuki together with a group of girls. Shinobu was extremely happy to see him again, so much so that she offered them free crepes and told them to eat as much as they could, without knowing that Pecorine had an enormous appetite and would wipe out the entire stock while still having room for more. That same night, Barista went to a nearby village and discovered that all the residents had been annihilated by shadows. Later that same night, Yuki began recovering some of his memories in a dream and saw his dying, so he screamed. Fortunately, Ahid pulled him out of that dream and warned him that what he had seen might be a past he had lived through more than once, and might also be a future that had not yet come. Then she told him as well that an important event would happen soon, after which she sent him back to the real world. Yuki awoke drenched in sweat and told the girls that he needed to learn how to use a sword, so Pecorine offered to train him. After that, while he practiced his movements, Kokoro watched him with eyes full of pride, thinking that all of Yuki's efforts would soon begin to bear fruit. A little later, while they were gathered for lunch, Kokoro revealed that Carol might not be joining them because she had some errands that she needed to take care of. While they were waiting for her, Pecorine overheard two men talking about how they had personally seen Princess Justiana, and at once the smile vanished from her face. The more the two men went on describing her unmatched beauty, the more Kokoro herself wished that she could see her one day, because she sounded as though she had stepped straight out of a fantasy novel. Outside, Carol was feeding stray cats when she met Kurumi and Shiro, and they invited her to have a drink with them. Before she could tell them to go away, the gigantic shadow, now far larger than before, suddenly appeared beside her. The city fell into panic, and Pecorine encountered some young men outside, who told her that Carol might be in danger. In truth, Carol was watching the giant shadow from afar as it was about to swallow the people of the city, because her orders had been only to observe. At that moment, Pecorine arrived and told everyone to get back so that she could face the monster with all her strength. Carol came out of hiding when she saw Pecorine, but she hesitated for a moment when they asked her to help. That hesitation nearly caused the shadow to swallow her completely, but Pecorine saved her life at the very last moment. And although Pecorine unleashed her strongest attack, the shadow only grew stronger and caused a massive explosion that threw Carol to the ground. But when she opened her eyes, she saw that Pecorine had protected her from being crushed beneath the rocks, putting her own body in danger in her place. Because Pecorine's back was exposed, the shadow began attacking her without pause, yet she endured it like a true heroine, continuing to protect Carol, whose leg was trapped beneath the rubble. And when the shadow prepared a massive attack, Pecorine gave Carol one of her shoulder armor pieces to increase her defense, then charged forward directly to take the attack upon herself. After a tremendous explosion, a crack appeared in the face of the shadow, and Pecorine collapsed from sheer exhaustion. As for Carol, once she had finally freed herself, she rushed to see how her friend was doing, and when Pecorine opened her eyes, Carol began shouting at her like a foolish idiot for risking her life to protect her. Tears were shining in her eyes while she remembered that only a short while earlier, she had been ready to abandon her, and yet Pecorine had saved her even at the cost of herself. Kokoro hurried to care for Pecorine, while Yuki prepared to face the monster alone. As his energy surged, his memories began returning to him, and suddenly he lost control of his powers. But then a massive wall appeared and separated him from the monster, and he found himself standing amid rubble and smoke. While he searched for his friends, Barista appeared and told him not to worry, because all of his friends were safe. At the same time, Kokoro was inside the palace, and there she saw a portrait of Pecorine together with the king and queen. A little later, Pecorine entered the hall and explained that they were inside a Nul castle, but for some strange reason, they were alone there. So Kokoro asked her about the portrait hanging on the wall, and Pecorine answered that her true identity was Justiana von Astra, the princess of Ansol. After that, she revealed that her parents had sent her on a mission to live among the people of Ansol and understand them, so that she might become someone worthy of ruling the nation. Her mother had even given her the crown she still wore to this day, and explained that it would protect her from harm, but in return, it would make her feel intense hunger. Pecorine had accepted that gift and continued her journey, traveling across the entire continent in order to fulfill her mission. But when she returned home, the guards at the main gate would not allow her in, so she was forced to make her own way toward the palace. Inside the palace, she met her mother's maid, but even she failed to recognize her. Justiana kept wandering through the halls of the palace, searching for anyone who knew her, until she finally reached the throne room where her parents sat. She told them that she had returned from her journey, but even her own parents did not know who she was. At that moment, a white-haired demon entered the room and claimed that she was Justiana. At that point, Pecorine realized that this woman was, in some way, the very same Her Majesty who was controlling everything from behind the scenes. And with no other choice before her, Pecorine left the palace and decided to leave her past behind, beginning a journey without any clear purpose. It was during that time that she met Yuki and the others, and life became far better than it had ever been before. They began taking on different quests and enjoying many kinds of food together, and despite her cheerful appearance, Pecorine was afraid of being forgotten again. For that reason, she worked hard to draw attention to herself, which is why she often embraced them, so that she could give them more reasons to remember her. When Pecorine fell to her knees, Kokoro gently supported her and told her that she would never leave her, and that the days they had spent together in the guild were priceless to her. And when Pecorine heard those words, she finally released all the emotions she had been suppressing without restraint, unaware that Carol was watching her from the doorway. After that, Carol turned her eyes toward the Colosseum and finally understood where she truly belonged, then prepared herself to face the shadow. At the same time, Barista reassured Yuki that she was not his enemy and asked him to remember the place where he was. Yuki realized that this place resembled the one where Ahid lived, so Barista told him that she was originally his own guardian angel and that she was trying to help him gradually recover his memories. After that, she spoke to him about the Princess Night power sleeping within him, but because he no longer possessed his memories, using that power might have dangerous consequences for his very existence. She also told him about the shadows that had swallowed the souls of hundreds of people, and explained that they were formed from the will of something immensely powerful, and that the world they were living in now was nothing more than the result of a battle between Yuki and that will. That truth shook Yuki to the core. In the real world, the people of the village were searching through the ruins for Pecorine and the others, but Tomo of Nightmare Guild arrived and ordered them to evacuate the area. After speaking with the civilians, she informed the knights of June's palace about what had happened. During their discussion, Christina arrived and took interest in the girl who said that she had been fighting a very powerful sword-wielding monster and had succeeded in protecting all the people in the area. Jun asked her to focus on the current mission, but Christina replied that it was strange for a monster of that power to appear so close to the capital without anyone noticing it until after it had vanished. Then she hinted that there was a monster seated on the throne of Ansol before leaving, and left June and Tomo in confusion. Meanwhile, during Carol's fight against the giant shadow, she was still wavering between her loyalty to Her Majesty and standing beside Pecorine, without knowing that the princess she served was in fact a fake, and that Pecorine was the true queen of Ansol. In the end, Carol decided to let the shadow take her life, but Pecorine appeared again and protected her. On the other side, Yuki had discovered the whole truth, and Barista promised that she would protect him and his friends. But Yuki said firmly that he too would protect his friends, and that proved to Barista that he had not changed at all. At that moment, Shinobu and the red-haired girl sent a message saying that the girls needed help, but Barista told them to remain where they were and let Yuki act on his own. After that, she opened a path for him to the palace and granted him a portion of her power of transformation so that he could protect his friends. Yuki arrived at the battlefield with a powerful strike and enhanced everyone's strength so that they could face the shadow together. Thanks to the additional support from Kokoro, the group managed to defeat the shadow, and it was Yuki who delivered the final blow. After that, they were immediately transported into the middle of the restaurant where Kurumi and Shiro were weeping over their loss. The moment they appeared, everyone gathered around them and celebrated their safe return. In the middle of the celebration, Pecorine thanked Carol for everything, then embraced her, and for the very first time, Carol returned the embrace as well, very simply. And so, life returned to normal in the world. And here the story comes to an end, dear viewer, and we hope that you enjoyed it and that it earned your admiration. If you would like a second season, let us know in the comments. And before you close the video, do not forget to press the like button to encourage us, subscribe to follow more episodes, and activate the notification bell so that you can watch every new anime on the channel. Write your thoughts for us in the comments, and we will meet you again in new episodes. Farewell.